Welcome to the second of our seminars on Ukraine Writes Back, Writers, Poets, and the War, which is co-hosted by the Research Initiative on the Post-Soviet Space at the University of Melbourne and the Ukrainian Studies Association of Australia and New Zealand. This is the second of these seminars, and I welcome you to it. My name is Mark Edele. I'm the Hansen Professor in History at the University of Melbourne, and I'm one of the conveners of the Research Initiative on Post-Soviet Space, together with Julie Fedor, who is joining us from Oslo tonight. I would like to acknowledge that I come to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. The two distinguished poets with us tonight are Kateryna Mikhalitsyna and Iryna Starovoyt, and I will not introduce them because that is the job of my colleague and old friend Alessandro Achilli, who is in this room as well. Alessandro is Associate Professor of Slavic Languages and Literature at the University of Calgary in Italy, and he will be conducting the conversation with our two guests tonight. Alessandro used to be a close colleague and comrade in Melbourne between 2017 and 2020 when he was lecturer in Ukrainian studies at Monash University, and his main areas of research are modern and contemporary Ukrainian literature with a particular attention to poetry. And with that, I will hand over to Alessandro. I will reappear in about an hour's time to help together with my colleague Olga Maxwell with the Q&A. If you want to ask questions, please put them in the Q&A function box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. You can do that during the event already, and we will then select from your questions during the Q&A. So feel free to ask questions come to your mind, put them straight in. And with that, Alessandro, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your kind introduction. Thank you for having us today. Hello, everyone. Good evening to those of you in Australia. Good morning to my fellow Europeans, and good night to the brave Americans in the audience, if there are some. After a first very successful webinar with Oksana Lutseshina and Oksana Maximchuk, whom we had the chance to listen to last month, today, as Mark mentioned, we're having the second webinar of the Ukraine Writes Back series. And let me express my gratitude once again to the research initiative on the post-Soviet space of the University of Melbourne, to Michele and Julie Fedor in particular for making this possible, together with the Ukrainian Studies Association of Australia and New Zealand. It's really an honor and a pleasure, of course, for me to be virtually here with you today to have a chat with two leading Ukrainian poets and also to listen to some of their recent poems. Our guests today are, as you know, as you can see, Kateryna Mikhalitsyna and Iryna Starovoyt. Kateryna Mikhalitsyna is a Ukrainian writer, translator, cultural manager, and a member of Pan-Ukraine and the New York Literary Festival NGO, established by Victoria Amelina. Kateryna is an award-winning author of nearly 20 books for children and several collections of poetry. Kateryna's poems have been translated into a number of languages, including Polish, German, English, Lithuanian, and others. Among the writers she has herself translated are Tolkien, Hemingway, Henry Marsh, Judith Kerr, Marius Burokas, and many others. Since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, Kateryna has focused on many things, including readings and workshops with the children affected by the Russian aggression, supporting animal shelters, and helping Ukrainian soldiers. She's also the coordinator of a helping initiative started by the Lithuanian Writers Union in October 2022. She lives in Lviv with her family and 3 rescued dogs. Iryna Starovoyt is a poet, an essayist, and a humanist. She's also an associate professor of cultural studies at the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv and a recurrent visiting fellow at St. John's College, Oxford. She's also board member of Pan Ukraine, and she has authored 3 volumes of poetry. Her poetry has also been anthologized, translated into several languages, set to music, embroidered on canvas in Lithuania, and fired in ceramics in the US. Iryna is also on the board of the annual Lviv Book Forum, the Culture Congress, and the Light of Justice Award, the Order for Intellectual Courage, the Lysiak Rudnitsky Ukrainian Studies Program, and has served as the head of the jury for the Transnational Literary Prize, UNESCO's City of Literature, based in Lviv. That was between 2019 and 2024. So once again, a warm welcome to you, Kateryna and Iryna, and really thank you so much for finding time between your many commitments for being here with us today and sharing your experiences and some of your writing. I guess we can start with the first round of questions, after which we will already have the chance to listen to some of your poems. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, I guess, neither particularly original nor unexpected, but I think it's still important for those, especially for all of us, but especially for those of us, the many of us who don't experience life in Ukraine firsthand. So I'd like to ask you how both the full-scale invasion, which started in 2022, but also the beginning of the Russian aggression in 2014, have changed both your relationship with writing and, more in general, the role of poets in today's Ukraine. So both your own experience and that of the colleagues that you interact with, that you read, that you meet, that you know. So who would like to start? Katia, maybe? Perfect.
Start. Hello to everyone. It's for a few moments, so it just out of the question of convenient. Iryna, please, can you?
Yeah, what I have understood that Katia is passing the word to me first. Okay. Well, what should I say? I think that we are now all steeped in the slow violence. This has started back in 2014, but it was rolling out really slowly for many Ukrainians, for many people who were living here. And we can say that there were those among us who suffered first, but we didn't believe enough that we will be the next. And I think we are now in between of the past and the future, because there is a kind of anxiety outside of Ukraine, in the immediate neighborhood. Who is whose future? Is it that Ukraine is showing how it could be for Poland, for Baltic states, for Moldova? Or is it otherwise, that they actually show the path to Ukraine and everything will be normalized, and earlier or later, not only the peace, but justice will come? And it seems like within last 3 years of the full-scale invasion, a lot of us were in a way, burdened with a question: is it still useful to be a poet? Is it still useful to be an artist? Is it still useful to be in the humanities, let's say, when things like this happening, the ongoing destruction of lives, maybe only people who can rescue, only people who can fight immediately with the arm are really in need, and all the others, in a way, are abundant and could be spared, should requalify immediately. I must say that I had these questions in my own head, but let me just remind that maybe it was the third or the fourth year or the fourth day of the full-scale invasion. My university was not functioning as a university, but as a huge humanitarian hub for people who were refugees and for people who were volunteering for the army. And there was a lot of activity going on, and we were like ants or bees in a huge hive. And after a couple of days, which passed in this way, my students approached me for the first time. We were doing a kind of small Zoom sessions every morning just to check in and to know who is where, whether they reunited with their family, whether they are relatively safe, what are their plans for today. And on the fourth or fifth check-in, I was asked, Pani Iryna, can we have some schedule? Can we have some small practice and learning? Because it's Monday is exactly like Thursday. Saturday doesn't distinct much from the other days. It's quite abnormal not to be attached to any schedule. Let's do something about it. And we have started a bit of learning and teaching again. And when we were teaching each other, because I think the teaching has changed immediately, that there was no hierarchy anymore, and there was no the situation when the knowledge goes one way, let's say, knowledge and experience and everything. And after that, I also understood that my students, who mainly are students in the humanities, cultural studies, philology, history, they were looking for some answers: who we are, why is it happening to us, what we were before this war, what we will be after. Is it that Ukraine actually has something to say? Is Ukraine is coming out of shadow immediately right now in these very difficult and unimaginable circumstances? And I think that on both parties, we come to conclusion that it's really important that Ukraine has its own culture, that Ukraine has its own language, that Ukraine has its own cultural activists and human rights activists for centuries, not just within last couple of years. And all this was like a rich start, a rich context from which one can develop. And I believe that what we come up in our small discussions, in our small conversations, there are countries which have already answered the question who they are and why and what's going to happen with them with the next decades, let's say. And Ukraine is a kind of a child again. You can ask this country, what do you want to be? And this is something which gives a lot of potential for the youngest generation in the country. So it was mentioned already that at the moment of big invasion, Ukraine was led by the generation of people in their 40s. And it was quite young elite as to compare to political and cultural elites of the neighboring countries and worldwide. But now I think that this country is already driven by people who are 20 something or 30 something. So our most important and most vocal citizens who do a lot to preserve the sense of community and to create Ukraine, which only should be, not yet is, but only should be. I think this is a very young generation, and they are very smart and effective. So this will be my introductory comment.
And
Thank you
here,
very
please
much,
tell me,
Iryna.
do you really hear me? Because I don't really understand what you really hear me. So
I
thank
can
you.
hear you. Yeah, really well.
Yeah. And now I'm so happy to be here. I'm really honored, and I'm really grateful for Iryna to have made this introductory comment. I will add a little bit of my personal experience to what was already said. Let's say that starting since 2014, as what was going on the eastern part of my country was so much of like totally, in a way, it was in a way very much familiar because of the books and the literary and the personal stories of the generations before me. But it was so strange and so difficult to perceive that it is already happening, that it hasn't got a name yet, even inside the country, not to tell from the outside. So kind of, and I hadn't had so much of a connection with people who had really experienced other fighting actions, or only those who were coming and seeking refuge from the eastern part to the western part. So I think I was silent for the major time because I was trying to analyze why I was silent only now, having the full-scale invasion and having found a language to try and describe what's going on in me and around me. So I think was half about responsibility, because I had no those immediate experience of how it is. And I felt that I have no right to speak about that much because I don't know how it is. First, I need to answer what I feel, to find those proper names to myself, and then to try and speak to the other people, to my own children, for example, or to someone outside. I thought that I haven't written anything at that time, but now when I'm trying to collect my new book of poetry, I found several poems, and they are exactly about that, the doubt, the way how you literally, like a blind person, try to find the new names for the simplest things that were already broken at that time. And but with the full-scale invasion, I guess the role of writing becomes to not to let that gap become more and more. So this is now the writing, I hope, and it's mostly about making connections. And I didn't let myself to get silent just because I've seen how much it works. Those are just words, just poems, and you cannot shield the people you love, the place you love with that. But because many of those who were able to write after 24 February of 2022 were putting their Ukrainian poets, I mean, were putting their poems directly into Facebook, and those poems were almost immediately translated into many languages. So I guess that was my part of seeing that this is not just my way of keeping myself sane and functional and letting because like collecting and shaping the words is like my way to shape the world for me. So it's like was at some point it was literally my thinking that, come on, I need to wake up like that next morning and do my job. And for that, I need somehow to cope with the chaos of emotions evoked by the Russian crimes, evoked by the absolutely unimaginable violence all around, absolutely unimaginable and unexplained. I mean, how to say it, even amount of losses that you still cannot get. It's happening and happening. So I thought that writing poems, it was purely selfish thing to keep myself functional and to keep myself efficient. But thanks to Italian, Lithuanian, English translators, and the way those poems were translated and spread around the Facebook or other communities all over the world, I was like, I captured this, like, this is how it works. It cannot, so the poem or the word cannot shield us or anyone else, but it can make a bridge, and it can make our voices heard, and it can make us being remembered in all this total chaos of what's going on with us. So that's basically it. And continuing the thought of Iryna and her wonderful story about her students, can you please basically return us some proper feeling of time and some routine? Yeah, routine was this was really the hardest to somehow try to re-establish. So it was easy for me to go to the warehouse, spend there almost all the day, doing sorting humanitarian help, sorting medical help. It was almost that easy to join any possible meeting when you have this chance to speak to other people outside my own country. But it was not at all. It was terribly hard to remember that you need to have a breakfast, that you need to feed your children with hopefully warm food, and preferably 3 times a day. That you need to remember that in the evening, my youngest one would like to be me to read some book aloud. So this was that's probably one of the most needed things, but also very hard to establish. And as especially now, I'm very much actively engaged in working with youth. So for them, especially those who write, I mean, for them, this is also becomes like a form of, first of all, showing here we are. We are from this country. This is our experience, whenever hard it is. We try to put it in the words and in the poems or in essays. And this is the way that also for them to say, hear us, see us, because here we are, and we will fight for who we are and to belong to this country, to this culture, and we will do our best to live on and to live on into the future, even having all those hard backgrounds. So that's why I think I still keep doing things connected to writing, thanks to this young people who are really strong, who has the experience they shouldn't ever had, but the words, the poems, in my case, because I work mostly with poems, helps them to cope with the situation, help them to keep seeing future, and with them also I see that future as well. Thank you.
If I can pick up from here just for 2 more sentences. First will be that it is not the first time in recent history that something unimaginably awful is happening to Ukrainians on their own land with an unprovoked aggression against them. The previous period was Stalinist collectivization and Holodomor. And what's important, even before the Second World War, it was so-called interwar period, right? But during that time, people who were absolutely defenseless were exposed to the grain requisitions and starvation of a huge scale, when the worst thing which was happening was not starvation itself, not hunger, but inability to help, inability to protect your loved ones, your neighbors, your community. And what I know from literature which I studied, that the narrative was never formed. We can say that Stalin actually acquired the full control over silence about all this harm. And one of the impulses, I think, on Ukrainian cultural scene immediately after the full-scale invasion was that we produce words which should be worth 1,000 images, because images are everywhere. They are spread technically immediately in the live broadcast around the world, but the images themselves does not speak, does not explain, does not provide context. And in this respect, they are a little bit dehumanizing human suffering. And I think that in the words which we produce, something important and universal is coded. It's not only injustice and immediate torture and pain, but it also the whole effort to live through the war, the whole effort to somehow remain who we are or even obtain the new level of identity. So not only trauma, but also post-traumatic growth, which is happening immediately within the huge shock.
Yeah, and now again, this is like to continue a little bit. Alessandro, please stop us when you're supposed to come to something else except just talking.
No, please go
This is
ahead.
like because the word I'm totally agree with what Iryna had just said about the images. That it doesn't work that much. It's also like news doesn't work that much. It just because I think writing and then reading or hearing poetry is in a way like with those, you know, newborns, is like a skin to skin contact. You cannot, if even you hear something you never can relate to, it still touches something very deep because something very human. And this is also the huge treasure what the poems or the words in general can do. They can keep us living in impossible conditions, keep those human side in us, and preserve whatever strange it might sound, preserve our own version of history. Because again, as Iryna mentioned, it's like not just the full-scale invasion, not just the war since 2014, but it was years and years of trying to silence. So now speaking out is that much important because it's kind of you pay tribute to those who were already silenced. That's in a way consciousness or not that much responsibility. You still have a voice. And in that voice, you have a huge part of the voices or the memories of those who were killed by Russians during this phase of war, but also the predecessors, because you don't, like any plant, you don't grow just like that in the middle of nowhere. You have those history of being silenced and having or keeping your voice be heard is also partly a tribute to that generations before you, because they were, like Iryna said, like silenced, like devoid of voice in many, many, many ways. So now it's also a really huge part of passing gratitude and passing experience and everything else. And just two little stories about the preciousness of words. The simplest one, I mean, inside it, because yes, I again totally agree with the fact that when you feel helpless is probably the worst, because that makes you feel that anything what you do becomes meaningless. And that's probably what Russians, with all their attacks on Kiev or whatever city is, or on civilians, on hospitals, on libraries, that's their aim, for us to lose meaning in resistance, for us to do like this and basically to agree on whatever peaceful thing they are thinking of. So I have this friend, Olena, who has a shelter in Nikopol. Nikopol is a city in Dnipropetrovsk region, basically 6 to 9 kilometers away from occupied Enerhodar. This city was shelled heavily and basically each and every day since July 2022. Olena has a shelter where she has 350 dogs in it, plus minus, because the number a little bit changes. I was there, I think in March, together with Polish reporter and then huge animal lover Wojciech Tochman. And we was, because this shelter views the what was earlier Kachovka artificial sea. Now it's of course empty. But Wojciech asked Olena, but like how it happens that fortunately no drones, no anything yet damage the shelter. And Olena told us the story that there was once like a couple of months ago, there was drone, because this city attacked mostly by artillery of different types and of drone by different types. Basically, Russians do with people of Nikopol mostly the same they do with people in Kherson, Ukrainians in Kherson, they hunt them by drones. That's it. That their somehow twisted way of, I don't know, spending time. So the drone was flying all around this shelter, and I said, Olena, what did you do? And she said, I was literally having the bucket of dog food standing in the middle of the huge yard in the shelter, and shouting to the one who was seeing me through the drone, go away, here are just dogs. I love them. Go away. You shoot me, but not them. I am responsible, the one. Go away. And the drone fly away. So that is like the most absurd thing probably you can imagine. Or most, I don't know, mythological kind of thing or fairy tale kind of things. But having this in mind, I still believe in a way of the words matters, because for me sometimes, I don't know, she lost her dream house recently. How can you help? How can you support even the person who's going through each and every day while I'm staying in Lviv, say? But she says that when I come to hug her, when I write her, I love you, that's the precious for her things. So that's why probably we are still here talking to each other, because it's a way to say, I'm here for you. And that inside the country very much matters. Thank you.
Iryna, is there something you'd like to add?
Well, you see, Ukraine not only writes back, Ukraine also shouts back.
Oh, yeah.
And very effectively. I think we approach here the category, aesthetic and ethic category of unbearable. And it was not many instances in human history that this was actually somehow put into writing. There were a lot of episodes of unbearable in human history, but there were not mature cultures prepared to respond and to somehow capture all their experience. And I think there is quite a well-developed notion of a poet as a witness to something historical which is happening before his or her own eyes. But here, majority of these poets, they are also cultural activists, they are also educators, they are also journalists, media personas. So they try to be visible. They do not hide from not only from the reality, but from all this very harsh experience and their responsibility to be vocal about it. And I think we gradually return to the old Greek understanding of what poiesis actually was. It was not only about writing or putting together beautiful words. It was about action, about craftsmanship. And in this respect, words are words with power, and words are words with meaning again. And I just want to mention that we do not hide, we do not pretend that nothing is happening, but we also do not hide from the beauty and from love and from care. And I think great resources of empathy, which were awakened or at least somehow opened up like a source which was underground, and the spring started to sprung. So I think we are now in this very interesting moment, socially and culturally, when Ukrainians are maybe the masterclass in empathy as well.
This is true.
Thank you.
And because Iryna mentioned about this, the poets and then actors, so we have a really huge bunch of brilliant poets who are in the army. They are not direct witnessing of what war is, but they are also direct actors in that war. They are actively, as much as this word can contain, defend what they hold dear. They defend all of us and the values. But the thing is that what astonished me the most, they are all or mostly about love. They live in the bare earth, like in trenches and everything, and they love it. They still find in them this. See how beautiful the roots stick out of this ground, how beautiful the sunrise or the sunset, despite every, like literal hell they are going through. So this is again, this is the power that what Iryna had said. Not only say out, not loud, not only actively fight, but to keep and see beauty. I mean, to see beauty, first of all, to keep that part of you that is able to see the beauty, and then to share it. And this is the strongest, probably. I still like really, really amazed, because if you read the poems or see the pictures of those Ukrainian culture people who are in the fight, there is so much beauty and so much love toward the land, the people, the things they try to save. And this is really also precious.
Thank you so much, really, to both of you. It's hard to say something meaningful after all that we've heard from you. I see that time is flying, and I'm sure that everyone in the audience is really eager to have the chance to listen to some of your poems now. So what I'm doing now is inviting you to read, I would say maybe for the moment, 2 or 3 poems each, and we're really all looking forward to listening to them.
Who will start, my dearest Iryna?
Do you want me to do that?
No, I can
Okay.
start. I think that's time I might start for. And I think Iryna also mentioned that the thing is with poetry, so now it's not only a poetry, it's a story in a story in a story somehow, because so it's special. Usually when someone in the West asked me to shortly describe what modern Ukrainian poetry is, I use Iryna's description, like a forensic poetry. Unfortunately, it is like that. Even there is like so much else except that, but that's, I really thank you, Iryna, for that precise definition. Forensic poetry, and now I probably will read the examples kind of that. This poem was written after the occupation of Izium, after the news and evidences of what Russian did there during the occupation since March till September did to people there, so they reached everybody. The poem was translated by a wonderful translator, Hanna Lev, who actually helps me a lot with my poems being heard in English, and it is called A Signal Spot. Will you come to me, Lord, along a thin thread of a pedestrian crossing, along a pontoon bridge to the top of Kremenets Mountain, the only place with the cell signal still alive? A pine to a pine makes a forest. A cross to a cross makes a cemetery. No squirrel, no war, a cemetery. No woodpecker, no jay, a cemetery. A pine to pine makes a forest. A digit to digit makes a number. What's the number of your silence? How does the cross smell under your digits? Like elderberry, like hazelnut, like the skin of a 6-year-old girl, like a piece of a carcel Russians picked up to scribble Ukr soldier unidentified. A pine to a pine makes a forest. A cross to a cross makes grief. Push as hard as you can to climb out of it, only to fail, for you are too high, too inscrutable, for hatred is the heaviest backpack, and who knows how much longer we can lug it. So, will you come to me, Lord, along a thin thread of a pedestrian crossing, along a pontoon bridge to the top of Kremenets Mountain, the only place with the cell signal still alive? And the other one, just a moment. This one was translated by also a great translator and an editor, Evgenia Kateryna. The first boy says, I know how my dog breathes in his sleep, and I know what he dreams about. The second boy says, I know how my kitty was crying when we got into the car and left. The third boy says, our Simba blew up on a mine. I buried his paw in the corner of our garden. The first girl says, I don't like dancing, but my mom takes me to the classes because I have to. The second girl says, I often dream that I'm dancing, but I always sway when I walk. My mom says that's because of the concussion. It can probably pass, she says. The third girl says, I don't have my mom anymore. A grandma shouts, put on your hats. It's windy. Everyone looks back. It's windy. The wind licks the curves of the slides. The wind hurts its tongue against the ragged bullet holes. The first one, the second, the third. The wasteland behind each of them. Void. The silence of a different experience, the difference of what is impossible to name, of what is necessary to name in order to keep the ability to speak and to be somewhere in the future. The war's little playground. Now I pass my word to Iryna.
Thank you so much, Katia. Before listening to Iryna, just a brief reminder to everyone in the audience. I'm sure you will have plenty of questions for Kateryna and Iryna. Just use the Q&A function, and in the second part of the webinar, we will have the chance to listen to your questions and to have Kateryna and Iryna answering them. Please, Iryna.
For 1,000 years, this land supported heaven with the pairs of domes, with belfries, with the yarmulkes of synagogues, with the minarets of mosques. And then Ukrainization. It's not quite what you think. It's something rather personal and doesn't happen with everyone. Simply, one morning in Kiev, Iryna says to herself, Iryna. Kyrillos calls himself Kyrillo, and Sergo, Serhiy. They decreed that the language didn't really exist in the first place. After that, it was rumored that the language herself was born as a deaf bumpkin. As such, you can't do anything to her, and she can't sue. There are no courts, because for the international tribunal, we need genocide and all such things, but there is no genocide. You see, wars don't happen in 3 days, and people don't have 2 lives. We don't need the legislation of amnesia. On the contrary, we remember with tenacity, especially for the future. I'm a refugee. I run like blood across my land. I can't get away, but I can spill it all. Where is my packet of Salox? All that remains are just the shattered pots of our neighbors, like from Tripilla, just heaps of slag and tears, like from Donbass. It's even better that you don't know what to do in such cases, because those who knew only said that they knew. Save me. In this land with the pairs of domes, with belfries, with the yarmulkes of synagogues, with minarets, already so many are lost forever. You can, I know. Simply see yourself in me. Say me in languages. Use your tongue. Salve my wounds. That was translation by Grace Mahoney, and all the rest, which I will be reading, will be at least collaboration of me and Grace. Let me move on to another piece. Just a moment, please. When the collider of new war sends God particles spinning around, and quarks and antiquarks split apart, in time's debris there will be vastness. sift through it and resift, as if a true buckwheat sower. Sky is the limit. Blind silence and soundlessness, while in social networks of generations, avatars change to black. Where ninth floor lie jut downward, a cat on the ninth leans on the ledge, while a dog sniffs out the worms of human flesh. There, words can't be heard from under rubble. There, the one who was trying to rescue didn't succeed. There, the rescuer has no tears, for neither Aeneas nor Noah would climb here to save some small life. This is truth wide open about human and pain, about eternal reproach, reproach like a cornflower. Sky is the limit. Only sky's the limit. Carry that reproach. Carry it like a newborn, as if the earth spins for it, and the last glacier has melted because of it. Let ice cool, let ease the pain, but cornflower will remain on the heart. Poisoned, it will sprout through the wound.
Thank you so much, Iryna. So maybe we have basically 10 minutes before we move on to the Q&A. Maybe I suggest that we now listen to at least one more poem of yours, because this is really a unique chance, I guess, for our audience to listen to your own writing. So I would invite Katia to read at least one more poem, and same for
Or maybe
Iryna.
quickly too.
Yes, why not? That's a good idea, I guess.
To continue a little bit somehow what Iryna just read in her poems, and it usually happens with me and Iryna that after our combined readings, people ask, how did you stage it? How did you make a scenario? But we didn't, and now we did also, I think. So that was not that we are prepared before what we will read, but somehow that's bridges and connection what I was saying before. The babies born in wartime smell of death. They're on the top of their heads in the softest spot, where later the scent of the first milk, warm and wholesome, settles. Their mothers don't feel it. Only angels do as they descend to the hospital bassinets to press their ethereal fingers to the baby's lips, to calm the fear and the knowledge that the death is already near. This is the superpower of those born in wartime, to know of death only to be stronger than it is, to grow upward, to grow tall for themselves and the departed, to play the part for two. But it is so hard, so unfair, right from the birth. And so, in the maternity hospitals of frontline villages and towns, the angels puff the smell of death out of babies. They carry it back to the skies, so that they remember where they should go, even if the point of no return changes its coordinates, even if the enemy adopts a different name. The babies in this land are born with the smell of death, only to hold on to their lives like no other. And now, Iryna, please, let's make those kind of thing we happen to make.
Let's flip, but I will finish with a small Ukrainian language piece, and I wish that you do the same. Thank you.
Okay.
In the village, no families remained whole. Who would be surprised by this now? No dwellings left, neither human nor dogs. And no dogs remained, just one, and that was a cat. The purring cat sits on the ruins, kills gatekeeper on blood and serum, sits and meow. Don't look back, don't call out. Maybe somewhere here is a portal to another reality. While this one breaks down into pixels, while there is interference on video, interference in sound, beep, 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 sunstroke. I'm glued to the screen, recognizing nothing, searching for my punctum. They are destroying us with weapons from a non-existent country. They think if they strike with cruise missiles made in 1985, it will become 1985 again. The immovable ruin is mostly in their heads. Cities shake as quake, sway and scatter. They are protected by our bad dreams. From under eyelids, nightmares fly out, pressing on the belly, on the chest, from generation to generation. Let us wake from this dream into another, from this century into another. Give us an answer. It gives no answer. We give answering back. Now a piece in Ukrainian. Сціпити зуби, з креготом піти протезним кроком. Все тепер протезне. Від дому культя лишені ріднезні могили і пороги, і сади. Оторопіння, може й отупіння від втрат, що лопотять, як прапори, по цвинтарях, де донори калин лежать під небом синьо-голубим. Із прежди віка всіяно піском морським чорнозем, щоб лягав на груди пером пташиним, ангельським пером, і рани затирав, і шерхлі губи, і все, що мозок думати не встиг, і всіх, кому смерть смертею зарання, і китиці калини, не зітхання, а з ополонки порятунок крик.
Thank you so much, Iryna. Katia, so I think we have
now
time
my
for both one poem in
Ukrainian.
English and one in Ukrainian, so you can also read more in English. I
Okay.
guess we have time for that.
Yes, so let it be first then in English, but just a moment, I need a second to come back to what I was planning to read in English. Yes. Just a moment. Lost the track of a poem. I would only like to say about my previous one that it was written on the 4th of July 2023, basically a day before Victoria Amelina's body were brought to Lviv to be buried. I don't know, it's just that poem was provoked by the thought that in a day I was supposed to say goodbye to one of my dearest friend I had. And then, could they just get a chance to grow old? All those tanned boys with wrinkled eyes, all these men with birds like that of Saint Nicholas, who carry around their enemy's death as the greatest gift for their own grandchildren. And the women who wait, and the women who wait in vain, and the doctors, men and women with the world's thinnest smile. Could only lullabies slip through their lips, not the praise for the dead. And the girls, my girls, with huge pockets in lieu of hearts to stuff there all the urgent requests, flags, coffins, broken lives, thorny memories, self-defense systems installed and not, wept out and congealed innermosts, hearts, cores, yellow like the inside of the hollyhocks painted on the houses just above the hedge. And the houses, too. Let the houses have this incredibly generous chance to grow old without shrapnel wounds next to the garden and the swing hung over the branch. And the dogs, the mice, and all the living creatures that walk under the sun and crawl on this ground and glide on this water and in this breeze. Step, 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 and sunflowers, and the grave, and the flag, and the handscarf, and the voice let out into the sky. Could they all get the chance to grow old quietly, just grow old to the age they've been destined for on this earth, on this land, under this cheerful sun. The poem is also translated by Hanna Lev. And now if I'm to read the Ukrainian one, again, just a second, and sorry for that, I just need to come back to the other note in my phone where the poems usually live. Just a second. Now. Замовляння на кінець світу. Далі буде тільки складніше. Ми, немов друзки бурштинові, розкидані морем сонного узбережжя, подрібнені рівно настільки, щоб сонце заломувалося в наших поверхнях, але не перетікало всередині. Розкидані узбережжям сонного моря, хоч море ніколи не буває занадто сонним, аби спинитися, аби перестати виносити друзки на сушу. Балтійське, Чорне, Північне. Море ніколи не стомлюється дихати, бути, текти, навіть якщо його плин видимий тільки річкам, що його напувають, тільки бурштиновим друзкам, що у ньому гойдаються. Люлі, 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 повторюю за хвилею, люлі, люлі. Скільки сонця у тобі буде достатньо, щоб освітити іншого? Скільки світла дозволить зігріти руку, що підбере тебе серед незнайомих піщинок, нанизаних на голос Мартина у піднебессі, на колообіг життя? Люлі, люлі, повторюю, люлі, люлі. Не зникни, прошу тебе, не дозволь собі розчинитись. Будь, лови світло, навіть якщо далі буде тільки складніше. Thank you so very much.
Дякую дуже. Wow. It's been intense. Okay, so I see it's 10 a.m. here, 11 a.m. in Kyiv, and I guess 6 p.m. in Melbourne. And Mark is back. We can see him. I guess Olga is joining us too again. So I'm leaving the floor to Mark and Olga for the Q&A session.
Thank you. And thank you both for your beautiful poetry and your reflections on writing and the war. Katia, I want to apologize for my usual slaughtering of your last name, which is one of my special skills in any Slavic language. I
can well relate to that, so don't worry. I have this special skills also, so that's totally okay. I understand that.
And our own rescue dog, who is slowly going blind in her old age, is conveying her greetings to your rescue dogs from Melbourne. So
I will surely pat them. And you know what? Because my oldest one, we took him from Lviv shelter when he was like 3, 4. So, and he has now this gray, like his brows are getting gray. And I said, no, I can gray. My hair can get gray. Yours not. Please, I can get old. You don't. You stay like you are. I won't survive this. So greetings from my dog to yours.
We have 2 questions in the Q&A. Before we go to them, I just wanted to react to the discussion you had earlier on the pen and the sword, right? So should you be writing poetry or should you be picking up a gun? I think Iryna said that Ukraine is not only writing back, it's shouting back, but it's also shooting back, right? And the ability of Ukraine to shoot back to a significant extent relies on it writing back. So both internally in Ukraine, but also internationally, the pen is an important part of that fight, I think, because to keep the support of the democratic world for Ukraine is an ongoing struggle, I think, and writers have a very important role to play in that. And I think your poetry is a very strongly emotional contribution to that. We have two questions. One is from Iryna Skubi, who is the Mykola Zerov Fellow in Ukrainian Studies at the University of Melbourne, and has written a beautiful piece about her own refugee cat and how she came to Melbourne. And her question relates to some of that. She writes, "Thank you so much for your impressive and emotional reading of your poems. In addition to emotions, you refer to material objects and animals. Could you please elaborate more on how their histories are related to human experiences of war and how the war impacts on them, vice versa? So both things and animals, and how they help you to speak about the war and to find the proper words."
Can I start with the object, because the object is quite near to me. Iryna mentioned tripilya, which is and ceramics and everything. So this is example of Vasilkiv's, no, Opishnya, sorry, not Vasilkiv. This is from Opishnya, basically one of the oldest and the most traditional places where different types of ceramics were made. This one, the rare example, what is called lambic, with a fantastic animal. And basically, I was presented with this animal, and I cherish it so much because we have this literary and volunteering trips with Pan Ukraine, and one of them was to Kryvyi Rih. And I was the only one children author among those who were traveling there. So I was sent to the children's library, and I had a wonderful, not that much of a reading, but kind of a reading, play, and theatrical action with children. But before that, I was like, the librarians asked me to have a cup of tea, and I was sitting and having a cup of tea, and this animal was standing like this on the shelf, and we literally see each other and fall in love with each other. So then later on, the librarian sent it to me, and this is like a part of a really old Ukrainian tradition of making beautiful things out of a clay, basically out of the land in which we are rooted in. But this is also a really wonderful present of the librarians, and which reminds me of what was there about those children, about how much, back to the topic, how much I can do, even if I doubt myself, say playing and making children smile. Meaning coming back to their normal way of being a child, at least for an hour or something. So that's the story of this animal sculpture. Iryna, can you add something? Otherwise, I can speak a lot about animals and anything. So let Iryna speak
I
first.
think we can go endlessly about it. What I should mention from my very personal account, first of all, I am a granddaughter of a couple who lost their living space, their home, during the Second World War. And they were renting spaces here and there up to very elderly age. But what was part of the family story were animals which were traveling with the family from place to place. Even a cow. My grannies were not peasants, they were urbanites, but they obtained a cow because it was a milk farm for their children, and to feed themselves and to be good tenants, it was good to travel with a cow at the time, back in 1944, 45, 46. So there was a cow, I know her name, I know a lot of stories about her. Then there were cats and dogs, more dogs, less cats, but both. And in my childhood, for some reason, I don't know exactly why, there were two parrots. one parrot who was very anti-Leninist and anti-Soviet, and was proudly surviving the Soviet Union and passed away a couple of weeks after Ukraine obtained independence. And he was, in his feathers, he was yellow and blue. And our late parrot, who was really part of the family, was given to my daughter when she was 8 years old. He only passed away a couple of months ago, and we all were very, very unhappy about that, because he promised to us, almost literally promised, to survive this war and to survive Putin. So I'm desperate about him passing away, but I know he was an inspiration for the whole family. And my father, back in 2012, had a play with this parrot. He was asking, give me a feather. The parrot was losing feathers seasonally, and the parrot was so smart that actually would go down in his small place and pick up one feather and give it exactly to the hands of my father. So we were so happy that all literate people who are writing in my family actually were blessed by the parrot and his feather.
Now back to the general context of how
I haven't mentioned that the parrots started to imitate sirens. When there were air raids, we had a very loud sirens, and nevertheless the parrot was already quite old. He changed his song when the siren was there. He would imitate it.
That's amazing how they can do. Basically, we go to the corridor, because now the sirens in Lviv is not that often, but and my dogs don't react on that. But if in some case we have air raid siren on, and later on the dogs wake up in the middle of the night and go and hide themselves in the bathroom, so we surely need to do the same with children. I don't know how they feel it, how they know it. But usually when they wake up and go, so we are going too, because then we at least would hear probably the explosion quite nearby. So I don't know how they react. But I have a friend who is in Ukrainian army since 2015. He is a teacher of geography and a wonderful photographer. You would probably never believe that the pictures he's making is made by the phone and in the worst possible places on the front line. He was in the Zaporizhzhia region, he was in Kursk region, now he's in Sumy region. These are absolutely amazing pictures of flowers, of things that like you have the ruin but have something beautiful left, like I don't know, a jar, metal hanging somewhere, a note from the people who lived there. So this is it. And he told me, like when this spring began, that he actually sent me a picture of the ant, how to say it, ant house. I don't know how to explain the ant hill. And he said that, you know what, like there is a mines everywhere around, but we try not only to walk like to avoid mines, but we also walk not to step on these anthills. And this is not like that we try to save so much their lives, it's the way we're saving human something in us, not to destroying what wants to live so much. So I guess the answer also to the Iryna's question would be like this: by saving the lives of ants or of bees or of cows or of any other animals, because there is a lot of stories of either and of pictures, of course, even the Facebook or any other social media of Ukrainian soldiers having cats or dogs next to them, or hedgehogs, or even mice, whatever. Sometimes they would like to kill them all, but anyway, they share sneakers with mice, because it's much better to share sneakers than, and during the night the mouse will come and get into their uniform, something like that.
Sleeping bag.
Yeah, so let's make friends with those who, or how hard, and I know this personally from those soldiers, and they were telling this for some time, especially in springtime, when they have to make new trenches, meaning to dig rather deeply into the ground. And if it's in the forest, or what we call posadka, so they need to destroy the roots of young sprouts. And this is so hard for them. They know that they are basically dependent on having the proper trench made as quickly as possible. But it's so hard for them to destroy those roots, because it's like they live in something. And this is also about those strengths and those part of that basically makes us all and our soldiers at the first place different from the Russian one. They are not only that
Dear
much.
Katia, dear
Yes,
Katia,
what?
I have a poem on this trench digging. Can I actually share
Yes,
it?
yes, please.
Yeah, that was one of the first I actually produced, somehow intaking the words of a friend who was a very important translator and colleague at the Center for the Humanities, who volunteered to the army and actually perished nearby Bakhmut on the night eve of 2023. So in a way, also dedication. The shovel has an underestimated role in the history of war. Horses and elephants have come and gone. Spears and bows make their appearances. Various models of tanks and grenade launchers become obsolete in time. Only the shovel remains as it was. Soldiers with masters and PhDs, poets and inventors dig trenches together. War isn't worthy of a poem or invention, but a good trench is also not in everyone's wheelhouse. As in Khrushchev's melding of the city and the village, we find ourselves grateful that our urban grandpas kept their small plots and made us dig potatoes once a year. Now you lay as a piece of potato in a trench that shields your life. The poet in war is a pulp of potato, a potato with a thermal imaging device, ready at any moment for the order to dig for himself a new grave, for your death and miraculous resurrection. Like your philosopher Skovoroda, digging your own grave, looking out over the moved down fields through your thermal imager, watching a field roll, thinking less about the mice and more about your own little spuds at home, now growing in basements and bomb shelters. You said, don't behave, but be fearless. If we make it to the morning, I will report back on the fairy tale of spring.
Thank you so much for this poem. I remember it, and I yesterday visited Yevhen's grave together with our Swedish colleagues, and I told this story and almost quoted your poem because it's so great too. And that is because we have not mentioned that much of this. So now what Iryna just read is also very much important part of what poetry do. Holding the dearest memory, making, because let's say back to animals, I think one of the most widespreadest photos with the Ukrainian soldier and a cat was Maxim Krivtsov, a poet, an educator, a director who got killed by Russians on the 7th of January 2024. So he had this, like, him and the cat lying in the trenches, and so that was possibly the I don't know, the most, how to say it, widespread picture of how the connection is in between Ukrainian soldier and the animals who lives next to them. But also Maxim said that if someone will ask me about what the war is, he would say the names. So what Iryna had just read, this example, behind this poem, there is a person. And the person is not just a number, it's not just a soldier, it's Yevhen Hulevich, it's Iryna's friend, it's the person whom I know. And that's how the war becomes real, becomes literally palpable. And that's, again, partly thanks to the poem and the way they can convey the emotions.
On the animal, I've been struck really also by the prominence of what you could say companion animals in in the imagery you get from the Ukrainian trenches. Not service animals, not dogs who are part of the fighting unit, but cats in particular, but also dogs, other animals who are
Goats, sometimes goats. And
yeah,
this is like, so, yeah, or baby deers or whatever, because that is like, basically, soldiers are talking about mutual saving, because taking care of an animal is like a shield against the total violence around. So that's it. And sometimes I need to say this one thing about the except making a genocide here, Russians suddenly do ecocide in very different ways. I can like produce some numbers and that it, but back to the animals. I guess that animals in Ukraine help not only suffering against Russian aggression, but they're helping to broke Russian narratives all around us, because let's say I have a list of shelters, and when I hear somewhere abroad that what can we do, we cannot stop this war, we cannot, I don't know, there is a doubtful things if we can support militaries, we don't know how can we support civilians, we are just this little human beings, which is really a Russian narrative. So I send this list. Okay, this you can do. You can help those who rescue animals all over Ukraine. This is not like, this is just a really good thing to do. And if you feel so small that you cannot somehow do anything else, so please help animals. And that's how Ukrainian animals broke Russian narratives about so-called small little humans.
and it actually strikes me this is quite unique to this particular war, because I've been a student of war much of my professional life, and this has never really struck me as, with the exception of cavalrists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cavalrists, they deeply care about their horses, and there's a very personal relationship, which is also existential, right? But other than that, I've not encountered this kind of strong role of companion animals in, or as is it's major part of the imagery and the narrative coming out from the Ukrainian side. So I find that really interesting. We have another question. Marco Pavlushin also asked a question about animals early, but he withdrew it because it was already answered. But he has a second one, which is about the circumstances and sense of purpose of your writing, how it has changed because of the full-scale invasion. And Marco is interested in how, well, if and how forms and techniques of your writings have changed. Has 24/2 had an impact on the formal side of your poetry, as well as the purpose of your poetry?
Iryna, can you please start? Because then I know that you have really much more to say than me. I will just add a little bit of personal context after you say what you have.
I'll try to be laconic, though the question, of course, could be extended into a book. Yeah, first of all, I think that my attitude to literature now is that it is our creative presence in the world. And Mark before was saying about Ukrainian military response, how to defend the society in this cruel human safari, because it's not only the war which goes on in trenches, it's also the war which insidiously is going on every night and every morning, when just ordinary people are bombed and hit it in their homes, in their bomb shelters, and so on. I was asking myself exactly, if our military are so creative that we withstand these first 3 days, then first 3 weeks, then first 3 months, and now 3 years, Is it that we artists and writers and cultural producers, we should have somehow be on pair with that? We have to be equals in this race to survive and race to rescue our society. And I think that my attitude hasn't changed so much, but there were three crucial points. First, I understood that my audience actually have changed tremendously. Now it's not only Ukrainians, and maybe mainly is not only Ukrainians. Then I understood, well, but these are also Ukrainians with very, very different experience. Sometimes it is muting me because I know many of people who listen to my poems actually have been through thick and thin, much more violently situations than I have experienced myself. So it makes me humble, and I think it somehow muted me in the first months of this big invasion. But then I understood one important thing, that there is an axiom that some subaltern only can speak about his or her pain. And then I started to speak about something else. And my task, my creative task was, I think, to understand that for the rest of my life, I will be speaking and representing not only myself, but also these hundreds of people who would write their best works later, but they would never survive into this later time. And because of that, again, it's a great burden, but it's a big challenge. I think we now are more, we Ukrainian writers, we are more in solidarity with each other. I hope there is no much competition as it probably was before. We rely on each other, we support each other, we quote each other, and this is not only in public talks like this, but also in our writing. We are referring to texts of each other, and this is something which creates a kind of sickness of our contemporary being. And I think that my friends in writing, they help me to understand as well. There are so many experiences, they are fleeting, they could just disappear if they would not be catch with the words. And because of that, I now understand much more what Omi Bhabha called nation as narration. Nation is a narration. And I think that within this great war, Ukrainians are creating great narrative of becoming and belonging. And so many of us actually reinvented their own identity and their relationship to the land, to people. We even now better know Ukrainian geography. It's not only you that know all the details, the small villages, small towns, back and forth fighting for them, but we ourselves also know our geography much better and understand how rich and complex Ukraine actually is.
We have so much time left, so I just want to thank Iryna for what she just said. So writing basically becomes much more closer in my case, and I think in many other cases also much closer, like something like a breathing in and out, something very necessary, something even obligatory sometimes, even if you would like to stop living or stop writing. Because at some point, even despite of all doubts or all points where you almost lose meaning of writing, you still have the sense that you are an important part of puzzle, those puzzle or patchwork, something that create the whole, and you cannot be missing as much as you can be because there are already so many pieces missing, and there are so many projects that commemorate and try to keep the memory. And the scary thing is there's those list of losses, whatever from literature or from any culture or any other sphere, they get longer. So while you can speak, while you can write, while you can catch up someone's dear work, job, values, stories, you're supposed to do that, and that's I guess it.
And one more remark. For the first, my impulse was to write simpler, to think, to have a back thought about the translation, which will come later. But I think it was already like 2 years ago that I started to be angry on myself because of that. And I returned to rhyme poetry as well. And I now do not restrict myself to this thinking about how it could be or could not be translated into other languages.
This is interesting because in my case, I guess it was rather vice versa. So the first half of a year of a full-scale invasion, it was mainly rhyming poetry for me because I was writing it usually walking from by foot from say warehouse to home. So it was written basically in between changing roles from functional me as Kateryna doing something to me, Kateryna the mother. And so they all has this kind of a lullaby thing, and I think it was mostly for me, but it worked also for other people. Like you try to, this is basically like mom would do after the family had this hard time during the day before going to sleep. She will probably try to find the proper lullaby, proper words in it to try and calm down, to try and make good wishes for a peaceful night or something like that. So first my poetry was like that, and then I simplified it, I guess. I turned more to non-rhyming poetry, but that was not like you said because I was having in mind how it would be translated. It just because I tried because so many of my poetry were evoked with the talks of people, soldiers, friends around. So I unintentionally tried to make it as closer to what we had a chat talk or real talk as it is. So that's why I think it is like, thank you so much for the opportunity even to think about that because I don't think I usually do. I mostly write.
Well, I think that is a beautiful final word. I usually don't think, I just write and all try to do
Oh,
more.
do something, yes.
Thank you so much, Katia, Iryna, Alessandro, and Olga for this wonderful seminar, and thank you to the audience. And oh, I have somebody raised his hand.
While you read what it was, thank you so much for the opportunity to have this audience, to have this platform to talk to I don't know, share the feelings and the experiences, which is very much important to us.
Okay, so good morning to those of you from Europe, and good evening to those of us from Australia. And, hopefully we'll speak again sometime soon. Thank you.